Since 2015, we've had at least one rookie finish inside the top 24 at the running back and wide receiver positions every single year, and in 3 of the last 4 years, we've had one top 10 rookie tight end as well. Especially recently, rookies are becoming impactful players for fantasy football as early as week 1 and fading them because they've never played in the NFL before and their talents in situations are still kind of unknown is no longer a viable strategy. So, I have 7 rookies that I am targeting in my 2025 fantasy football drafts, and I'll also end the video with a few very deep sleepers that you should know before the season starts. To kick things off, we can't talk about the 2025 rookie class without mentioning Ashton Jeanty, a super elite prospect drafted 6th overall to the Vegas Raiders, coming off of a 2024 college season of 2,600 rushing yards and 30 total touchdowns. He is everything that you want in a running back. He is good size, great speed, acceleration, tackle breaking, receiving ability. It is all there for Ashton Jeanty to become the next elite NFL running back. He is literally in the same prospect status as Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, and Ezekiel Elliott, and the fact that he comes into the NFL on a Raiders offense with absolutely zero competition for touches and an improving offense around him for a new coaching staff, new quarterback, and another elite weapon in Brock Bowers, the stage is set for Jeanty to absolutely explode for fantasy football in year 1. The question you should be asking yourself is not should you draft Jeanty, but rather how soon should you draft Ashton Jeanty in the first round of fantasy drafts. We have him projected as the RB5 this year on 4for4, behind only Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Devon Achane. And once you get to the end of the first round, Jeanty is pretty much fair game for everybody involved. You should have zero concerns about him as a rookie because when we have a rookie of his pedigree drafted in the top 12 at the position as a rookie, they have almost always hit. In 2016, Zeke was the RB3 in ADP, finished as the RB2. In 2017, Fournette was the RB11 in ADP, finished as the RB9. In 2018, Saquon RB6 in ADP, RB1 fantasy finish overall. 2021, Najee Harris, RB11 ADP, RB3 finish. 2023, Bijan Robinson, RB4 ADP, RB9 finish. The only miss that we have as a community is Clyde Edwards-Helaire because we vaulted him up so high as a first rounder to the Kansas City Chiefs. He did still finish as a top 24 running back as a rookie, but he was a massive disappointment if you drafted him early on that year. Still though, Jeanty is not Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and the other 5 names speak for themselves, all of whom finished as top 10 running backs, 3 of whom were top 3 fantasy finishers, and all but Bijan Robinson outproduced their ADPs as rookies. Fantasy football really does not have to be difficult, and if you're at the turn to start your draft, Ashton Jeanty should be on your list every single time. Now, next on this video should come at no surprise if you watched my breakout wide receiver video. It is new Panthers rookie wide receiver Tet McMillan, who's drafted in the first round, 8th overall in the 2025 draft, and fills a massive and immediate need on the Panthers offense at wide receiver. Tet McMillan is a 3-year early declare out of Arizona who had back-to-back seasons of 1,300 plus yards as a sophomore and junior and scored 8 or more touchdowns in all 3 years. He is a beast of a player at 6'4", 220 pounds, runs a sub 4.5, is a great route runner, can make all of the contested catches and moss defenders on the sideline, plus has sneaky yak ability that you don't often see from players his size. In the Dynasty streets, the popular comparisons for him as a prospect were Mike Evans, Drake London, T. Higgins, and even a little bit of Nico Collins. Just these big-bodied ex-wide receivers who can become the focal point of an offense on the outside, but also have some flexibility to move around the formation a little bit too. So for a player as pedigreed as Tet McMillan to then join an NFL offense as desperate for wide receiver help as the Carolina Panthers, in year 2 of a Dave Canales offense, the sky is really the limit here. The talent gap between Tet McMillan and the rest of the Panthers receivers is massive, and combine that with the passing volume that we know Carolina is going to have because they're going to be a bad team, they're going to have to throw more. Who is the one player that is far and away the most talented and quarterback-friendly guy to throw to on that team? It is Tet McMillan. If you're looking for this year's Brian Thomas Jr., an absolute alpha wide receiver 1 in a bad offense with minimal competition around him, that this year is Tet McMillan. Now going back to the running back position, my second favorite rookie behind Ashton Jeanty in this class for the 2025 season is Steelers running back Caleb Johnson. Now listen, I love Omarion Hampton, and in Dynasty, he is a top 5 running back for the long term, but Caleb Johnson has the starting role right now, and I think has an easy path to 300 plus touches in 2025. He is an exact 1-to-1 replica of Najee Harris, just 6 years younger, and he was drafted to be the new workhorse running back for Mike Tomlin. Over the last 3 seasons, Najee has rushed for over 1,000 yards and totaled over 1,200 yards all 3 years, scoring anywhere between 6 to 10 touchdowns in a very mediocre Steelers offense since Big Ben's retirement. Najee was also very inefficient. He averaged less than 4.1 yards per carry all 3 years, less than 6 yards per reception in 2 out of 3 seasons, yet he still received a ton of volume despite the inefficiencies. And on that volume, Najee's PPR finishes were RB14, RB23, and RB20 over the last 3 years. Now, we might have an improved offense with Aaron Rodgers at the helm, and with a better offense could come more touchdown opportunities or receiving volume, as Aaron Rodgers was one of the league leaders in targets to the running back position last year in 2024. I know a lot of people want to be in on Jaylen Warren, and people think that he could see an increased role this year, but I think Jaylen Warren's just someone the fantasy community just wants to be higher on than the Pittsburgh Steelers themselves really seem to be. For 3 straight years, Warren has been the definition of an 8 to 10 touch running back per game and nothing more. And that's held true through 3 different coordinators during that time, including Arthur Smith's usage of him last year, deferring to Najee Harris for nearly 300 touches once again. I'm just fully ready to copy and paste Caleb Johnson into that Najee Harris role. It makes complete sense just based on Mike Tomlin's history in Pittsburgh, Arthur Smith's history in Tennessee and Atlanta, and with just who Caleb Johnson is as a player. He is a big-bodied, bruising running back who shouldered a massive workload last year at Iowa and was immensely successful. Also doesn't hurt, we've already seen how good Caleb Johnson looks in black and gold already, except now he's going to be trading in smacking Ohio State and Maryland on Saturdays to smacking Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Baltimore on Sundays. As a late 6th round pick, you can't find someone with a 300 touch ceiling and enough juice to finish as an RB1 on that volume. He's being drafted as the 5th rookie off the board, and I think that is criminal considering the possibility, or maybe even probability, that he could finish as the 2nd best rookie running back this season. This video is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is officially back, and we here at 4for4 are fired up. Group chats are already buzzing, rankings are locked in, and I've got a few bold takes that I'm probably going to regret by week 2. This year on 4for4, we are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should as well. Whether you're a first timer or you're a veteran making your millionth league, I have always appreciated how easy Yahoo makes the draft experience, how clean the app is, and how customizable the leagues are. Plus, it's just a fun platform to be on all season long. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins on August 4th, so stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League today at yahoofantasy.com/TMAP. That's yahoofantasy.com/TMAP, yahoofantasy.com/TMAP. Now, we are on a 2-year streak of a rookie tight end finishing as the overall tight end 1 in fantasy football, with Sam Laporta in 2023, then of course Brock Bowers last year in 2024. And I have to say, we have 2 very good candidates from this year's rookie class to try to make it a three-peat. But if I had to put my chips down on one of them being the tight end 1 this year, I would pick Colts tight end Tyler Warren out of Penn State. Now, if you did not watch Penn State last year, you missed out on a phenomenal season from Tyler Warren with over 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns receiving, plus another 200 yards and 4 touchdowns rushing, and 1 passing touchdown too. He was everywhere, did everything for Penn State, including catching a touchdown pass on a play that he snapped the ball. There was no shortage of creativity in getting the ball into Tyler Warren's hands because they knew all they had to do was just get him the ball. And that's my hope for how Indianapolis is going to use him this year. Line him up outside, line him up in the slot, in line next to a tackle, in the backfield at fullback, anywhere and everywhere, and just put the ball in Tyler Warren's hands. I know the quarterback situation is not great in Indianapolis right now, but it also wasn't great for Brock Bowers either, and he was just too much of a beast, catching a ton of passes that he was still able to be the fantasy tight end 1. Warren is versatile and talented enough to catch design screen passes in the backfield and get a first down, win a route against a linebacker over the middle of the field, moss a defensive back back on the sideline or just be a huge target in the end zone for whoever ends up being the quarterback for Indianapolis. Or just give him the ball on a handoff or like a jet sweep inside the 5 and score that way like he did at Penn State too. We're spending all offseason debating if Josh Downs can break out in year 3, debating if Michael Pittman has any juice left to even be worth drafting, or if Alec Pierce or Adonai Mitchell are going to do anything this year. But all of those questions might just lead to the answer being Tyler Warren as the main guy, the safety blanket, the chain mover, the red zone threat, the versatile weapon anywhere on the field. Tyler Warren might just be the best receiver and second best fantasy player in Indianapolis behind Jonathan Taylor, and with an ADP in the double digits and really lackluster other options at tight end going after him, how do you not take a shot on an uber-talented, do-it-all rookie who is drafted in the top 15 of the NFL draft? If you've waited this long to take a tight end, you're probably streaming the position anyway, so why not draft a guy who could ascend out of streamer territory and into an elite weekly starter? Then, we have 3 wide receivers all going in rounds 10 or later in our multi-site ADP that I love taking shots on, even if I need to wait a couple of weeks for them to just sit on my bench and really ramp up as rookie receivers in their offenses. The first is Emeka Egbuka, who is rising rapidly in ADP over the past couple of weeks and probably won't be a double-digit pick come late August, especially after the news of Chris Godwin's second surgery in June and probably not going to be ready to start the year. Plus, now the clip of Baker Mayfield talking him up on the Kelsey podcast.
And Emeka Egbuka is an absolute stud. He's a real deal. You know how you just can't teach guys leaving the ground to catch the ball? He's always grounded when he catches it, keeps moving. There's yak potential out the wazoo there, but he's just so damn smart. I mean, he's willing to block, willing to do everything we ask him to do, but then, I mean, we can plug and play him at any of the 3 receiver spots right now.
Emeka Egbuka was drafted to be a continuation of wide receiver talent in Tampa Bay. They knew that Chris Godwin's injury was serious enough to hamper him this year, so Emeka could fill that role in the short term, but also Mike Evans is aging and has dealt with some injuries recently too, that they also then have Egbuka for the long term to pair with Chris Godwin when he's fully healthy in 2026 and 2027. But there is a world where Egbuka is just too good to keep off the field this year in 2025. Like I said, if he's kind of filling that Chris Godwin role early on, he could be an impact player immediately. Then, if Evans takes a step back this year or even gets hurt again, Egbuka will be right there again to be a weekly wide receiver 2 with upside. There are just so many paths for Egbuka to hit this year that he could be a massive contributor to every team that he's on from week 1 to week 17. And more people are kind of starting to realize this, and his ADP will rise. But as long as he's in the 8th round or later, I'm going to be targeting him everywhere. Now, the next receiver is Texans rookie Jayden Higgins out of Iowa State. Now, I loved Jayden Higgins before the NFL draft. Then he was drafted with the 2nd pick of the 2nd round as the 5th rookie receiver off the board, and he fits an immediate need for the Texans after letting Stephon Diggs walk and losing Tank Dell to injury for the entire season. Jayden Higgins is essentially Tet McMillan light. He is 6'4", 214 pounds, which is the same height and 5 pounds lighter than Tet McMillan. He ran a 4.47, same speed as Tet McMillan, and even though his end of season numbers weren't as gaudy as Tet's, he was still very productive in both seasons at Iowa State, including almost 1,200 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns in 2024, averaging 3 yards per route run, 29% targets per route run, 15% first downs per route run, all of which are better single season numbers than any season from Tet McMillan in Arizona. Now, obviously, besides just raw talent and pedigree, the main difference between the 2 wide receivers is projected usage and targets in their NFL offenses right now. Tet, the wide receiver 1 in Carolina. And as I mentioned already, I think he could be this year's Brian Thomas Jr. with 130 to 140 targets with the Carolina Panthers. Jayden Higgins, though, is at best the wide receiver 2 for Houston, playing across from Nico Collins. So his ceiling really isn't that high, but his price to draft him is also not high either as an 11th round pick. But we have seen the wide receiver 2 for CJ Stroud be productive in both seasons already. In 2023, it was Tank Dell averaging 16.5 points per game as a rookie before getting hurt in week 12. Then last year, Stephon Diggs averaged 15 points per game until he got hurt in week 8. So if Jayden Higgins really is the wide receiver 2 from Houston, plays on the outside across from Nico Collins, he should receive a ton of snaps in 2 and 3 wide receiver sets, run a ton of routes, get targeted frequently enough across teams' second best corners, and he's talented enough to do well on those targets to maybe produce as a wide receiver 2 for fantasy, just like Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs. It is slightly opposite of Emeka Egbuka, who to me is a great talent in a good situation. Higgins is a good talent in a great situation and should succeed with that opportunity. And the last rookie wide receiver I really want to highlight is probably my favorite rookie in the entire 2024 draft class, and I was drafting him in every single Dynasty rookie draft I was in because I believe in him so much and his draft cost is so cheap. It is Patriots wide receiver Kyle Williams. And I cannot stress enough to you how huge of a fan of Kyle Williams I am. I was saying before the draft that I hope he lands on day 2, and I hope he lands somewhere with an opportunity to play immediately. And boy, did both of those things come true. My pre-draft comparison for Kyle Williams was actually Stephon Diggs. So for him to be able to watch and learn with Diggs is only beneficial in my opinion. Diggs himself, also a 32-year-old wide receiver coming off of an ACL injury on effectively a 1-year deal, as he can be cut next year to save almost $17 million in cap space. Now, sure, he does look good in the clips of camp that we've seen already, but there is a world that Stephon Diggs is just not who he was prior to the injury, especially at another year older. Prior to the NFL draft, Kyle Williams was actually tied with Tet McMillan, Luther Burden, and Travis Hunter as the top receivers in this class in my rookie modeling system. Then draft capital just kind of separated all of them out. Kyle Williams fell below all those guys, but prior to the NFL draft, Kyle Williams was up there, and he is a very good prospect. He's decently sized, runs a sub 4.4, is a great route runner, one of the best separators in the entire class, and has a production to back it up at 2 programs in college. Plus, perhaps the biggest reason that I love Kyle Williams so much, especially as a rookie, is that he has a better than fair chance to be Drake May's wide receiver 1. If Kyle Williams is as good as I think he is, he can pass Stephon Diggs pretty quickly, and all reports out of training camp so far have really backed that up. He's probably the most slept on receiver in this entire class, and I'm just going to call it right now. Kyle Williams is this year's Puka Nacua. I will not leave a single draft this year without Kyle Williams, and I'm willing to take him 2 to 3 rounds ahead of his 13th round ADP to make sure I get him. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, to close out the video, I want to highlight a handful of rookies who are going undrafted past the 15th round according to ADP, but I think that you should know their names now so that during the season, you're ready to jump on them on waivers if they start to show out. The first player I want to highlight is Mason Taylor, the rookie tight end for the New York Jets. He has the lineage, the film, the athleticism, and the opportunity right now as probably the second best receiving option on the Jets behind Garrett Wilson. I'm not a huge believer in the passing production of Justin Fields, but if Mason Taylor can get 5 to 6 targets a game at the tight end position, that's extremely meaningful on a weekly basis. The other rookie tight end I love is Oronde Gadsden, who for some of you may be hearing his name for the first time. He was drafted on day 3 by the LA Chargers out of Syracuse and was hyper productive as a wide receiver convert in college. He was the only tight end in this class to run a sub 4.6 40-yard dash. He averaged 14 yards per reception in college, which is a big number for tight ends. And he is one of 9 drafted tight ends since 2022 to post over 2 yards per route run over their entire college careers. A list that includes Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, Dalton Kincaid, Isaiah Likely, and then Colston Loveland and Harold Fannin this year. He is competing with Will Dissly and Tyler Conklin in LA, but Harbaugh absolutely loves him, and I think Gadsden is the best receiving tight end of the 3. This Chargers team really needs receiving weapons, and Gadsden just might make an impact for fantasy as a rookie. Now at the wide receiver position, I love me some Torrey Horton as well, the day 3 pick for the Seattle Seahawks out of Colorado State. Horton had a tremendous production profile in college and fits a skill set and role on the Seahawks depth chart that they don't really have in anyone else. He's 6'2", 196 pounds with 4.4 speed, and we're wondering how JSN and Cooper Kupp thrive in similar slot type roles on this offense. And then Torrey Horton is just there competing with Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Jake Bobo for the wide receiver 3 role. And I could honestly see Torrey Horton being the new Tyler Lockett for Seattle or the new Rashid Shaheed for Clint Kubiak coming from New Orleans last year. Not to mention that if Cooper Kupp is truly washed, Horton might even be the wide receiver 2 with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Now, he's not somebody that I'm drafting and stashing in September, but know the name for midseason and beyond. Then at the running back position, I really like DJ Giddens as a new handcuff to Jonathan Taylor. JT has missed some time pretty much every single year of his career, and we've seen his handcuffs be very productive, whether it's Deion Jackson, Zach Moss, or even Trey Sermon last year. And DJ Giddens is better than all of those guys with his production profile out of Kansas State. Again, not somebody that I'm drafting, but if you like handcuffs like me, and especially if you end up being the guy that drafts Jonathan Taylor, you should know who DJ Giddens is. Brashard Smith for Kansas City is another very interesting name. He's kind of like Torrey Horton, where there isn't another player like Brashard Smith in the Chiefs' backfield. Hunt is old and really just a plotter. Pacheco is coming off of an injury and is 26 years old in the final year of his deal. Elijah Mitchell gets hurt a lot, also kind of old, may not even make the team. And then we have 22-year-old Brashard Smith, who's 5'10", 196 pounds with sub 4.4 speed and a workhorse and big receiving profile from Miami in college. Reports out of camp are already noting that he's getting first-team work in the red zone, a la Jarrett McKinnon's role from a few years ago. He'll probably be someone that you roster but then never really know when to start, so that's kind of tough to value. But if he's great as a pass catcher and then Hunt and Pacheco just aren't really cutting it on the ground, Brashard Smith could see an increased role as the season goes on for one of the best offenses in the league. And then lastly, a name that no one really knows, but I think could honestly be a league winner type of running back off of the waiver wire if he gets the opportunity, and personally, in my opinion, the best rookie running back on the Dallas Cowboys. No, it is not Jayden Blue. It is Phil Mafah out of Clemson. You see, Mafah and Blue are very different running backs. Blue is 5'9", 196 pounds with a 4.38 40. Mafah is 6'1", 234 pounds and didn't run at the combine because he had surgery on his shoulder after the season, but I would imagine that he's not crushing the 40-yard dash at 234 pounds. Jayden Blue was not utilized as a between-the-tackles guy at Texas, partially because he was playing behind Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Brooks, but even last year, after CJ Baxter got hurt before the season, Blue was the RB2 behind Trey Wisner. Mafah was a 2-year starter at Clemson, even working over Will Shipley in 2023 before having the backfield to himself in 2024 when he rushed for over 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns. They are two very different running backs and will have very different roles in this offense, which means both can be used simultaneously and both could be relevant for fantasy football. But if you're talking strictly 3-down upside in this Cowboys offense, a la finding this year's Rico Dowdle, if either of these two running backs get that more workhorse role in this backfield, my bet would be on Phil Mafah as the actual bruiser and runner between the tackles, who then earns the ability to catch passes out of the backfield. I don't think they would look at Jayden Blue, who was never used as a workhorse in college, and say, let's give that guy 200 plus carries on top of his 50 to 60 targets that we're already giving him. I think it would actually be, let's give Phil Mafah 40 targets on top of his 200 plus carries that we're giving him. I also want to point out that this is Brian Schottenheimer's offense now, and the last time that Schottenheimer was actually calling plays was in Seattle from 2018 through 2020. In those 3 years, he used undrafted free agent Chris Carson as the workhorse over first-rounder Rashad Penny and all of his injuries, over third-rounder CJ Prosise, and over sixth-rounder Travis Homer. Schottenheimer said what I just said earlier. Let's give our 6', 220-pound undrafted free agent who runs a 4.58 40-yard dash, those 40 to 50 targets on top of his 250 plus carries. And I can see a world where he says the same thing about Phil Mafah in this Cowboys backfield, who was a very productive college running back over the last 2 years out of a big name school as well in Clemson. Of course, this is all even assuming that Mafah or even Jayden Blue beat out Javonte Williams or Miles Sanders to get the starting role. But of the two rookies there, my bet is on Phil Mafah being more of a workhorse than Jayden Blue. So while everybody is drafting Jayden Blue in the 12th round, I'm going to pass on him for a shot on a rookie wide receiver like Jayden Higgins or Kyle Williams. And then I'm watching the waiver wire mid-season to strike on Phil Mafah if he does get that opportunity.